Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Blast off on another episode of Hero Paranormal Podcast. The original outlaw of the airwaves is bringing you a VIP episode recorded just south of Area 51 at the base of La Madre Mountain. And, well, we got a killer show today. If you don't know about Craig Campobasso, well, you must be living under a rock because his newest book, all of his books are great. All of his books are great, but his newest one is above and beyond most things I'm able to even formidably conquer from a reading perspective. A massive, massive book. And, well, we're going to go into that. Craig is amazing. A multi-award-winning filmmaker, Emmy-nominated casting director. Craig was 15 when he started in the entertainment business. His young acting career was off to a great start. He landed his first national commercial for McDonald's chicken sandwich and spoke a few killer lines. After graduating high school at age 17, Craig went to work behind the scenes on such blockbuster film classics as Frank Herbert's Dune, directed by David Lynch, and two Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, Conan the Destroyer and Total Recall, one of my favorites. He began his casting career on Steven Spielberg's Amazing Stories, another one of my favorites, and he received an Emmy nomination for Outstanding Casting for a series on David E. Kelly Picket Fences. Craig's casting career spans 3 decades. The guy is an institution. Craig directed, wrote, and produced the short film Stranger at the Pentagon, which was adapted from the popular UFO book authored by the late Frank E. Stranges. Craig has appeared on many radio shows, including Coast to Coast AM with George Noory. He's been a guest on Open Minds Talk Show, and that's just to name a few. He's been on Ancient Aliens, and just about every other talk show you can shake a stick at. He was recently on Greg Carlwood, which is one of my favorite. If you haven't been over to THC, the Higher Side Chats, this latest book of his, The Extraterrestrial Species Almanac, the ultimate guide to greys, reptilians, hybrids, and Nordics, well, released just 2021, is something that is kind of an arsenal of species identification, and it's akin to, well, it's a work of art. It is massive piece, and we're going to get into how big the book is, just how much is covered, and really the amazing things that Craig has done here. I also should mention that he has revitalized a lot of older things, and we're going to get into that. He's got a very interesting background when it comes to his family and how things went down, and it's just fascinating. I couldn't be happier. I'm tickled to have Craig Campobasso on. But first, I got to do the spiel. If you haven't been to HeroParanormal.com, please check it out. You can join for just $8 a month, and you get everything. All that stuff you can't access is it's at your fingertips. Also, you can go on Podbean or Patreon. We're on there. And I think soon to be on some other stuff. So anyway, that's my spiel. Quick and short. We are going to have some merch, too, that hopefully is above and beyond what you guys expect. Without further ado, the man behind the Almanac of the Century and beyond, Craig, my man, we are live. Welcome to Hero Paranormal Podcast.
Hey, how you doing, Ryan?
I can't tell you what a work of art your book is. I've been, usually I read this through Audible, or I guess I listened to it through Audible. And
right.
I can't tell you, usually, it's an 8-hour drive round trip to Utah to an area kind of known for Skinwalker Ranch, but the Uinta Basin of Utah. And It took the entire 8 hours to do your book, and it was worth every hour. What an amazing piece of work.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I did 82 races, and the reason I chose the number 82, I actually had a whole lot more, is I had to keep the book a certain length, but also I'm a big fan of the former Canadian Minister of Defense, Paul Hellyer, who's come out and talked about that extraterrestrials do exist. And in one of the last talks that he gave, he talked about 82 races that he knew about. So I decided to pick 82 and sort of do an homage to him.
I think it's a good number, and that's why I think it's kind of the almanac of the century, because previous to this, nothing has gotten even close. I think the closest was 40 in the 40s. Am I mistaken?
Well, I've seen that a few other people have tried doing books like this. I didn't come up with the concept. My book agent did, and he actually had the name of the book, and he called me and he said, I just came up with this great idea. I can sell this book. And he goes, and you're the one to write it. And I said, yeah, I actually am, because I know all this stuff. And anyway, so that's sort of how the book came about. And then I sort of saw that there were some other things floating on the internet of like some book in Russia, which was where they just took pictures from the internet and sort of suck in for the beings and things like that. So, and then a few other people had tried to do some illustrations and that kind of thing. But I was actually able to obtain some actual photographs of extraterrestrials and put in the book as well. We've got a male and female clarion humans. They're a petite race, amazing different faces. The females have these cute little round doll faces with big almond eyes and very petite noses and mouths. And then I took a photograph of what I call the unknown alien when I was researching an abduction case. Just so happened I've been friends with a guy that's been abducted, and I flew to the Midwest, and he was taking me near the forest where his backyard is, and was showing me where they were walking out. So I was just snapping pictures, and I actually caught one of the aliens on camera, and so I put it in the book.
Wow, and it's fascinating. It's the amount of detail in the book. It's obvious that you're getting so much information. In my mind, I was thinking some of this has to be channeled in some way, shape, or form. But before we get into all of that, I want to firstly get into some of the unique synchronicities that had to do with your family members. I think DNA goes a long way when it comes to these realms, and how this connection to your father, who had passed away sadly at the time. But could we go into that at all, Craig?
Sure. So my mom told me when I was 12 that my dad was my stepdad, and that they got married when I was 1 year old. And strangely enough, my dad, as I call him because he's the man that raised me, worked in aeronautics his whole life, and we could never ever visit. The last company he worked for was Northrop Grumman, and we could never visit or go on the property at all. But in 2019, when I was writing the ET Almanac, I got a phone call from a lady in Canada who says she was my fourth or fifth cousin. She was a real live genealogist and was looking for information on my mom's father's side, which is how we're related. So I gave it to her, and I asked her if she can find my biological father, because basically all I had was a name. And she goes, yeah, I can find anybody. And she did, and she sent me where he was buried, which is here in Los Angeles. And I went to the mortuary or cemetery the next morning and asked if they had a name in their computer who called when he had passed away in 2006. And they said, actually, we do have a name, but we don't have any contact info. So came home, looked the man up. I saw he was living around the corner from me, of all things, and that he was 74 years old. And I thought, well, maybe this was one of my biological father's friends. So I wrote him a letter, put my picture in there. 2 days later, I got a phone call from his son, who said, my dad got your letter. And I said, was he friends with Fred? And he said, no, actually, it's his half-brother. And I said, oh, wow, so you're my cousin. And he goes, yeah, I guess I am. And he goes, what's really strange is you look just like him. And so anyway, I met them for dinner where they just told, for 3 hours, they just told me everything about him. And of course, I've continued that relationship with them and have gained this whole other side of a family, which is fantastic. And
cool.
So about an hour into the dinner, my uncle says to me, well, you know, your father really wanted to go into the Air Guard, but he wasn't of age, so my mom had to sign a piece of paper. And when he turned 18, he went into the Air Force, and he said, oh, yeah, and by the way, he worked for Project Blue Book. And I was like, what? Wow. And he goes, yeah, Project Blue Book. And I said, do you know what that is? And he said, well, kind of. And then, of course, my cousin chimed in, and he was saying, well, me and my brother always tried to get out of him throughout the years what he knew about UFOs, but he would never, ever talk about it. And I said, well, he's really good at holding secrets because he never told you guys about me. And so we all got a chuckle out of that. But my uncle seems to think, since he was in his early 20s and he was an extremely fast typist, that he probably typed up a bunch of the Project Blue Book reports and was, you know, a paper pusher for some of the generals and things like that. And he did work in intelligence as well. And was also stationed for a little while in Bordeaux, France, which is where I hear they sent a lot of our guys who flew there to learn intelligence. So, yeah, it was just fascinating. And here I'm writing books for MUFON, which is more of a public arena for the same thing that Project Blue Book was for the government. And then when he left the when he left the Air Force and came back to L.A., somebody introduced him into the Union IATSE, and he became the head of construction at Warner Brothers and built all their sets for movies and television. He was so busy there that they actually gave him a trailer that he slept on the lot every night because he got up so early to do work. So I've been in the film business since I was 15, a casting director for more than 30 years, a filmmaker for the past 15 years as well. And a writer, so I just think, just like you said, it really is in your DNA. It's
in your blood. Mm-hmm. It's almost like this just follows family lines, and by, you know, I mean, come on, 2019, your uncle, they tell you everything. You look just like him, and I can't. The amount of work that you have put towards really disclosure, in my opinion, and I think this book is a huge step, just opening minds. How has the effect of the book, what kind of response have you gotten?
It has gotten a tremendous response. It's already had its second printing, and it's only been out since January 1st, and they are doing a third reprinting in April. So it's doing extremely well. It's gotten good response. There are, you know, there's haters no matter what you do.
Right.
And they're a small number, and a few of those people have made their voice known that they think that MUFON has lost their credibility, allowing me to do a book like this, but what they haven't learned was how I obtained the information for this book. They didn't do their research or anything like that. And that's what I always find in a lot of cases, especially in other cases that I'm big on, like the Stranger at the Pentagon story, because I knew Dr. Frank Strange's for the last 8 years of his life, and I made the Stranger at the Pentagon short film, and making the feature film as well. We're gearing up for that. So, but a lot of people just hear little bits and pieces, and they don't have the whole piece of the pie, or go and search out what the whole piece of the pie is. So then they start putting things down. But that has been a very small fraction with this book. The majority of people love it. I've gotten fan letters. I even got a fan letter which I framed and have on my wall from like a 7-year-old boy, literally. And he wrote, "Dear Craig Campobasso, I think your extraterrestrial species almanac is great. And you're a film producer, so you can make this into a documentary. I would like to see that happen." And then he drew, said a few more things, and then drew a stick figure of himself. So, of course, I wrote him and told him we are in the midst of doing a documentary right now, which hopefully we'll have ready by the end of the year. So, and what's really cool is we're going to bring all the extraterrestrials to life in the documentary through CGI and through other processes. So it's going to be really interesting and cool.
And, everything you do seems to be interesting and cool and more epic than usual. The Stranger at the Pentagon is one of my favorites. And the film, if I'm not mistaken, sold out for the first time ever in the venue.
Yes. Yeah, at the Burbank Film Festival. I only made the short film to use it as a tool for investors to say, look, this is the potential of what it could look like if we had the right money. And in the short film, I had over 80 visual effects as well. And they're not ILM, but they're not bad, and it looks pretty good. And then I got a phone call from the Burbank Film Festival who said, "I hear you have this film, and we would really like to see it." So I took it over and showed it to their director, and they made it an official selection right away. And when the screening came, it held 275 seats at the AMC, and it sold out every seat for people who came to see Stranger at the Pentagon. And then they added another screening at midnight, and that was half full.
Wow.
So it's had a tremendous response throughout the world. There's one of our producers, Tanya Maidenford, she had done a few screenings over in Germany, and she just said there were just hordes and hordes of people, and they were standing up and applauding and just, going crazy for the story. Everyone loves that story. I love that story. I think it's fantastic. So, so since I was with him for so long, Dr. Frank, before he passed, the big feature film will be able to show a lot more about what happened during the 3 years that Valiant Thor was there at the Pentagon.
It's one of the coolest stories. And as far as the haters, I say screw them. You're
my book agent called me and he said, "Well, I just have to tell you, you made it." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "When you got haters, that's when you know you made it."
Mm-hmm. Isn't it the truth? Yeah.
So anyway, but It's all right. I mean, every show that you do, what people don't understand is when you put like a year of your life, like I did, into the ET Species Almanac, like literally day in and day out. And I am the one who had to oversee all of the artwork at the same time and all of those things that are going on. And then when you make a movie and you pour your heart and soul into it, and people don't understand how difficult it is to even make a short film or a big feature film, and to just put it down without even realizing all the work that goes into it. So I usually say to those people, I challenge you to go and write a book, and I challenge you to go and make a movie, because they won't be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so difficult to do. I mean, to get a book deal is difficult enough, and this one happened in a matter of 4 days.
That says enough.
That's unheard of.
It's awesome. It's awesome. I really think, yeah, that's when you know you got it, is when you have haters. Your book is 800 plus pages, amazing, really amazing artwork. And let's get into the species, because I can't wait. What's really cool is how optimistic, even about the malevolent species, you get into, and namely the reptilians. You mentioned the clarions, and you get into just about everything else. I loved how you even got into the MIB, which, arguably, yeah. How would you explain, which species? I guess the order, because I thought that was unique as well.
Yes, what I did is over from the age of 26, I became very interested in the subject matter, and I've been studying it. I'm 61 now, so I've been studying it for a very long time, and I got immersed into reading all of the books about contactees from around the world. Started going to UFO conferences and meeting all of those people, befriending all of the ufologists, all of the top people who are on every show every time somebody's talking about UFOs or extraterrestrials. And, of course, one of my favorite shows was UFO Hunters, and to have Bill Burns walk up to me at a conference and say, I love the Valiant Thor story. I'm so glad you did it. And things like that really meant a lot to me, because I just love Bill Burns, and I love that show. I thought they did such a great job with it.
They did.
But so what I decided to do was pick a lot of my favorite contactee stories, for instance. So Wendell Stevens, when he was alive, Colonel Wendell Stevens, he did about 65 books on contactees from around the world, right? Mm-hmm. So these are all different things. So what I did is I, of course, obtained permission. And by the way, all of these books, because I think these are very important for people to read, they are, his daughter Cece now runs the website, and it's the only place where you can buy the books. It's UFOphotoarchives.com. Mm-hmm. And all of Wendell's books there are available in PDF format. You can buy all 65, I think, for like $100 and some bucks, something like that. So some of the ones that I chose that I thought were very interesting races were, they're called Aryans, and they're from Aldebaran. And these were Asian races, and another one of the Asian races were called the Ni, or the Gni, Gne. And it was interesting that they talked about in their solar system that all of the planets and everything warred and warred and warred for years and years and years, and the death toll was just astronomical, and at one point they all just banded together. And and started working together, and now they travel the universe and explore in motherships and things of that nature. So I think there were several races that were on that craft. Another very fascinating race are the Itapurians, and their planet's called Itabi Ra, and they came in the 50s and 60s and sort of settled in the Amazon, in the middle of the Amazon, and they a long time ago lost their taste for chewing food, so they went to a liquefied diet.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, their mouths became small, and they have little rudimentary teeth. Their fingernails fell off, so they have these little gloves on the tips of their fingers because they're sensitive. And but they go exploring to find other worlds because they need to find new tasting food sources for their liquid diets. And so they would hybridize some of their plants with our plants, and they were friendly with the local natives there as well. So that race was extremely fascinating. The one thing that I found was a little common with a lot of the races, including some of the Agarthans, the Clermers, the beings from planet Koldas, Koldas. They would mingle for a few years on the surface and take jobs and get to know the people so that they would have that experience, because part of what they were doing was helping Earth, so they had to have their own personal experience with it. And I think it was Valdar. I think he was from planet Koldas. He was, I think, in Europe or Italy for a couple of years, and one of the people that he was in contact there with was a starseed from his home world. So at a certain point, he revealed who he was, and that's when all of the contacts sort of started. Another really fascinating race are the Umites, or the Umo. They visited many different people on the planet. There's even pictures of their craft online. They have a symbol. It's like a three lines with one line going down the middle. And they were also in Italy. And what they did was they took a different approach, is they would send letters to scientists all over the world, the top scientists, and give them leads about how to clean up the environment, how to do certain things to make the planet a better place to live, which I thought was extremely fascinating. There's actually a photograph of one of the guys. His name is, again, it's something raw with on the end. I can't remember the first name, but if you Google Umites, 8 feet tall. This guy was 8 feet tall. There's a photograph that somebody took of him. He's in shorts and a Hawaiian shirt. And he was one of the Umites that was here back in the day. Another fascinating race are the sort of lizard-looking beings from Rigel. And they had brought on board a 14-year-old Cherokee girl, and not to abduct her, but to have a conversation with her and to share who they were. And they hooked her up to a telepathic machine. And so the being could talk to her, and she could talk to the being. But she said when the being talked or vocalized, it was a series of chirps and what sounded like kissing sounds as well. And it is also said that the mantis beings sound like that a little bit
Correct.
as well when they vocalize and aren't using telepathy.
Correct.
So this Cherokee girl, actually, when they put her back, she was able to remember the entire incident because she was hooked up to this telepathic machine that let her have these memories. And this sort of lizard-looking guy, there's a great rendition of him in the book, by the way.
Oh, cool.
And he just wanted to share with who they were, what they were doing. He gave her a tour of the ship, and I just found that really fun and fascinating as well. And then we have the Clarions, which I told you about, and they also have been all around the world. Right now, some of the Clarions are actually physically living in Italy, and there is a contactee there named Maurizio Cavallo who wrote a book called Beyond the Heavens. Mm-hmm. He's the one who's photographed several of them, and he gave me permission to print 2 of the photos. And anyway, they're very advanced beings. There was also another contactee named Elizabeth Klarer, Klarer. She was a South African woman. She was a starseed that came here, and when she became of rightful age, a Clarion man began visiting her. And this was actually her husband that she left behind on Clarion. And so they developed a relationship over time. She became pregnant. He took her back to Clarion, and she delivered the baby there because he explained that the baby's organs and things there could not be sustained on Earth. So then after she delivered the baby, she was brought back here to live out the rest of her days. And there's wonderful interviews on her, and there is a book about her out there online. So that's another different perspective of the Clarions. And then another really, really interesting race are the Alpha Centaurians. In the book, we call them Apunians because they first started visiting the mountain Apu in South America. And so the locals there called them Apunians because they looked at them as the gods of the mountain of Apu. So
cool.
When their children or people were sick, they would always go and try and find when the Alpha Centaurians were coming back, and when they did, they would go to their village and they would heal the sick. They would help make it rain for their crops because these are extremely poor people. So they did a lot for them there, and that contactee is Ricardo Gonzalez. He has a couple books out. One, Contact from Planet Apu, Beings from the Future Among Us, and The Ark, an extraterrestrial warning from Alpha Centauri. So he does do. He did here a couple of years ago in a big field in Mount Shasta. He had a huge gathering where one of the main Alpha Centaurians, who I believe is 8 feet tall or more, his name is Ontaral, and that he actually invited several of the people that were there to come and meet with him, actually in the forest. And they appear in this thing called the Zendra, which is like an opening, almost sort of like you could call it a Stargate, and they're in this dimension, and the people here on Earth are in this dimension, but you can have a conversation. So I actually had a very good friend who was there who witnessed this. He was not one of the ones invited to go and meet Ontaral, but he saw everyone come out of the forest and saw the light and everything there in the forest, and said he got everyone's stories firsthand, and that they were all changed. It was almost like when Moses saw the burning bush for the first time.
Right.
They were just stunned and didn't even know how to react to that. So
Right. And a lot of these things do border on spirituality. And I have to say, I love Ricardo Gonzalez. Your research, going to those conferences, befriending peers, and all the top people really shows it shows and paid off, because it's pretty amazing. Getting on the Ra, I was really amazed by the Itapirian, the detail. That's the culture that, if I'm not mistaken, all of their machines are separate from like their natural space.
Yes, their original planet was dying. The whole ecosystem was depleting, and so they had to find a new place to live. And then they found 3 planets that were close by. So what they did is, in timed intervals, they moved their entire civilization, along with the aquatic life, the plant life, the insect life, all life, in timed increments. And then what they did is, then they took the second planet and they put all their machinery there, and they said that they found that machinery was linked to cancer on their world. So they put it on a different planet, and then they took that third planet and made it a heart center, where this emanation of just this unconditional love would constantly be sent out and reinforced into the other 2 worlds, which I just found absolutely incredible.
Cool.
And that type of thing. So, and they really couldn't speak because of their small mouths and things of that nature. So they would, when they were here, if they were talking with somebody from Earth, they would either have a device on them that was like a brooch or something on them, and they would telepathically speak, and their voice would come out of whatever apparatus they were wearing.
So cool.
And again, the detail on that was really fascinating. So
it's so cool. I think it's so interesting. And the photos are amazing. One race I was enthralled by, and I was hoping we could go into a little bit of detail, was the Cyclops. I thought that was pretty interesting, how different they are than first of all, that they exist.
Right. Well, and you know how I learned about the Cyclops is because there is a Cyclops on board Valiant Thor's flagship.
Mm-hmm.
That is, so on Valiant Thor's flagship, there's Valiant Thor, who's the commander. There's 4 vice commanders. There's Vice Commander Teal, Thawne, Dawn, and Zan. Then there is another created being, Melchizedek Master, named Unaya, and then there is his associate, who is a Cyclops, whose name is Yeo, or Yo, Y-E-O. And Dr. Frank told me where they were from, and he said when he first met him, he said it was so strange looking into one eye, and he said, and I was thinking inside my head, God, he looks so strange. And then he said, I wasn't even thinking that he could telepathically read my mind. and he said to me, well, you're pretty weird looking too. So,
yeah.
So that's actually where I learned about the Cyclops.
And there's a lot. I'm actually glad that you mentioned that, because there is a lot of Melchizedek scholarly unions. But I wanted also, a lot of our listeners may not know about Valiant Thor, Stranger at the Pentagon, and just how important that was for our time period.
Sure. I'll give you a nutshell. The website strangeratthepentagon.com, people can watch the short film there, or they can, if you have Amazon Prime in America or the UK, they can watch it there as well. There is more history about it on the website, but the short condensed version is that Valiant Thor came here. It was a prearranged meeting, and he came here on March 16th, 1957, which was a Saturday. Landed at 8 a.m., was brought to the Pentagon, then was brought on the underground train to meet Eisenhower, Nixon, the rest of the Joint Chiefs, and the other powers that be. And he came with a proposal that was to eliminate disease, poverty, prolong life, to talk to them about atomics, the dangers of it, not only for our planet, but for other planets and interdimensional worlds and universes as well. Talk about free energy, all of the things that would make the planet a better place for all to live. And that during a 3-year VIP status where he would live there, and they would work out and discuss this proposal as well. But he did befriend several people at the Pentagon. One was a secretary. He became close to Nixon and to Eisenhower, but more with Nixon because Nixon was more readily available, because Eisenhower was busy with a lot of the other things. But so it's a what the military-industrial complex was just getting its legs at that time. And what that means is they were an offshoot of the government that had their own agenda. And they would do whatever they needed to get done for their own agenda. And if anyone listens to Ike's farewell address, he talked about the dangers of the military-industrial complex. It's online. Anybody can watch it. So in the end, Nixon and Eisenhower were for the proposal, but in the end, the military-industrial complex wanted Thor's technology. He had organic technology, and all they had were sort of dinosaur saucers from the graves that had crashed over the years, all the several crashes, and when they realized they weren't going to get it, and they baited him along and along, over these years, they all turned it down on the basis that it would put doctors, nurses, pharmaceutical companies, electric companies, everything out of business, and our world economy would crash, and that would be the end of that. So Valiant Thor left on 3 years later, March 16th, 1960. He met Dr. Frank. He had the secretary from the Pentagon retrieve Dr. Frank, who was doing a talk at a local church for 2 weeks, and Dr. Frank was a unique minister. He talked about UFOs and the Bible and things of that nature, and he would incorporate George Adamski and Orthon and those types of things. But what was interesting, just for people who aren't aware of that era, at the time Valiant Thor came, a Venusian named Orthon met with Adamski, who was talking to Adamski about a lot of the same issues. And then another Venusian around in the early 50s met with George Van Tassel out at Giant Rock and talked to him about the same issues and gave him the blueprints to build a machine called the Integratron, which reversed the aging process and prolonged your life and kept you healthy. Same thing that all of these beings were coming to share with the earth, right?
It's so cool.
So Dr. Frank came and met with him, and this is just my own opinion, but I believe Valiant Thor saw the opportunity that Dr. Frank was there speaking and wanted to meet with him because he knew he was open to who he was, and Thor knew by that time that he was that they had already turned down his proposal. So by meeting Dr. Frank would start a grassroots campaign to tell the world about Valiant Thor and who he is. And he already had photographs of him because the photographs were taken by August Roberts, a retired Air Force photographer, amateur ufologist, and who was also friends with Dr. Frank, and Howard Menger, who was a major human extraterrestrial contactee. And those photos of Valiant Thor, his vice commander Dawn, and Jill, who is Zan's wife, taken on the Menger farm at a UFO lecture, were taken by August Roberts, who then went to Dr. Frank the next day with the pictures and said, these people aren't from here, and that man, Valiant Thor, he doesn't have fingerprints or handprints. And I went to Howard and asked him after the lecture if they gave him the secret handshake, because there was a handshake of 8 kind of movements, and the star people would always do that with Howard, so he knew that they weren't from here. And so that was confirmed that they weren't. So when Dr. Frank was speaking in Washington, not only did he have his normal UFO photographs up there and the Adamski photographs of the craft and of Adamski, but he put a big picture of Valiant Thor in the middle. They didn't know his name at the time, but he would then tell the story that August Roberts told him and say that this is a man who is alleged from another place. So when the secretary went to the church and talked to Dr. Frank after his lecture, she pointed to the picture of Valiant Thor and said, he wants to meet with you. So it's amazing how it all just sort of interweaves together and how it all came about.
It really is. And that's the best explanation ever, Craig. And I love the organic technology. I might have to use that in the future.
Sure, absolutely.
It's a good term. And I wanted to get into something really interesting that is the one consciousness, or the we are one, that many of the races seem to share through the book. Not all, but some.
Yes. Well, it's what they call unity consciousness. We believe here we're brought up to love God, and I think God could be something different to everyone. Up there, they call God the invisible architect of all. In other words, we go back. I think the Clarions explained it the best, that the first primordial atom contained all life, and we are all a part of that. And therefore, we are the owners. We are the family of the entire universe. So when you go back to the unity consciousness and you say we are all God, it totally makes perfect sense. Now, on worlds such as Earth, we are a dualistic civilization that is learning the difference between right and wrong. We are, as Dr. Frank explained it, that Valiant Thor taught him, he said, Earth is beings are learning. They are going from clods to ultimately become gods.
Wow.
So it's a school, and every planet is a school throughout the entire universe. And the University of Melchizedek, which is located in the Mira system, and has about 490 planets from one end of the galaxy to the other. All of these university planets teach different subjects. So, for instance, in my book series, The Autobiography of an Extraterrestrial Saga, the lead character, Tehran, is a Pleiadian, and he is a professor who teaches starseeds from this universe, other universes, and other super universes who have lent their soul energy to come and to incarnate on Earth, because when you're an advanced soul, you will quicken your energy being dualistic and rise up quicker, and then everyone around you starts rising up quicker, and this is how consciousness-raising programs work. So you start getting more and more star seeds, and generation after generation after generation. And I've been meeting lots of star seed kids who have had these generational things, and they're able to come in a lot stronger. And these kids are speaking star languages, drawing star maps, doing grids, doing like phenomenal things that is just beyond what any normal kid would even be able to think of doing. So there's so much that is out there, and to bring in another couple things that aren't in the book, like our solar system, the home of the Melchizedeks here is on the interior of Venus, for instance. The Galactarian Alignment of Space Peoples and Planets, the home here in this solar system, is on the interior of Saturn. They explained, Valiant Thor has explained also that all of the planets are made hollow, and that there is a central sun, and that there is, it's a whole different way of life and living there. Like in Agartha, in the middle, there's the central sun, and it sheds a perfect amount of light. It is not blinding. And then when nightfall comes, a cloud cover comes over and covers it, and then it's nightfall. But in the center of the Earth, everything is much larger. Like the beings there are like 20 feet. They say a grape is the size of a grapefruit. The animals are gigantic. And then as you spread out closer towards the surface in some of the other cities, where there's several hundred of these cities all connected in the Agartha network, what we have is the capital of Agartha is Shambhala the Greater, beneath the Himalayas. The capital of former Atlantis is Posid, which is beneath the Mato Grosso in Brazil. And the capital of the ancient Lemurians, who were here way before the Atlanteans, is called Telos, and that's located beneath Mount Shasta. So in these other places, what they do is they have crystals that they put up in the top that give off this sunlight. They can burn for millions of years up there as well, and that if you're going through tunnels or walking through tunnels, or if their bullet train is going from one side of the inner Earth to the other side, they say it takes about 2 hours only.
Wow.
Right? That's pretty fast.
That works.
And yeah, really fast. And but that heat is what, like, if you were walking down a tunnel or a darkened area, the heat of your body would make the walls glow and provide the amount of light that you need. So I sure would like to have a visit to Agartha and see it. I think it would be great. I was taken there once in my in a dream, and I just got to see this big, beautiful lake and just the beauty of what it looked like. I didn't see any people or civilizations. I just saw this beautiful inner lake that looked like a powdered blue, illuminated sort of water in this beautiful, beautiful open cave. So,
how cool is that? That sounds amazing. It's
yeah.
One of those things I would love to see that, and I think a lot of these terms like family of the entire universe and we are all God are so perfect, and we could learn so much about it, but it's so hard in a dualistic society. I wanted to just coincidentally jump into the Melchizedek as mentioned in the Bible. Is this a coincidence, or is this actually similar?
No, I think it's all tied together. It's because they're an ancient priest and priestesshood, and they go way back. I have not studied the Melchizedeks in ancient religion. I was taught by when I was writing my books by Melchizedek masters who would come to me and download the information. So what I became after I had a 2-year waking process with master teachers is what they were doing was clearing my vessel so that they could therefore start imparting the information that I was going to write in the autobiography of an extraterrestrial saga books, because it's all about the universe and the setup and how everything works there, and all about the galactarian alignment of space peoples and planets, about Melchizedek, the University of Melchizedek, the greater duality out in the universe. And so the Melchizedek teachings really are coming back here. They are one of the main staples in Agartha. Each city has its own high priest. Telos, the high Melchizedek priest there, is Adama, and the high priestess there, her name is Terra Ra. Mm-hmm. And then all of the other cities have them now. There was a book done like over 100 years ago called The Smoky God, and this man and his son found their way in a boat going through the hole and into the inner earth, and they sort of got lost there. They were picked up by these giants, and they were brought, and they actually lived on the inner earth for 2 years, and they talk a lot about a lot of the same stuff, and that they were taken to one of the main hub cities, which was called Eden, and in Eden they met a high priest as well. And when Admiral Richard E. Byrd went into the inner earth, he also talked of meeting a high priest.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's right.
So here we have several confirmations that there are high priests and priestesses in all of these major hubs that go throughout the whole land of Agartha.
And I am such a believer in the hollow earth theory and Admiral Byrd. It's amazing, and I need to look at that Smoky God. That sounds good.
Yes, it is. It is online. I looked it up. It's a really, really good story. I mean, the man the son, the father ended up dying, but the son, when he came back and he told them, they put him in prison for like 30 years, saying he was insane.
Wow. Yeah. That's a big price to pay.
A big price to pay just for talking about being on the inner earth. So,
yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. But the main thing with the Melchizedeks is that the Melchizedek schooling is taught throughout Agartha and also about the angelic core as well. So most of the beings in Agartha have ascended, some have not, and those are working their way towards ascension as well. So, but they're able to be with these fully conscious beings and to also learn from these great master teachers.
So neat and so well explained. It's epic work here, Craig. I will post a link on where to buy the book. Where can listeners grab more info on your work, social media, and future projects?
Sure. My book website for the autobiography of an extraterrestrial saga and the ET Almanac is autobiography of ANET.com. The 4 book series of the autobiography are on the homepage. People can click a button and buy all 4 if they want, and hard or soft cover. And then if they want to get the ET Almanac, they just click on in the upper bar, other books, and they can buy it there. Buy any books off my website. I personalize them and autograph them. Social media, Facebook for Stranger at the Pentagon, Autobiography of an ET, Craig Campobasso, and we also have an ET Almanac page there. And Instagram, Craig Campobasso, Tehran Books, and Stranger at the Pentagon, and the same with Twitter as well.
So cool. I love that you're all over the place and all over the internet, because you kind of have to be these days. And with a work like this, which in my opinion is just a work of art, it has to get out. So I will post a link on where people can buy it, and I hope we get to chat again in the future, sir.
Oh, I would love that. This has been fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Have a great day. Take care. It really is a work of art, the amount of effort and research that's been put into this 800-page plus 8-hour listening if you're listening on Audible, and if you do the audiobook. But either way, I actually recommend getting the physical book, because it would be nice to have the all of the artists' renderings, which are just fascinating, just absolutely fantastic. Until next time, guys, keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around.
Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Evazine. Blast off.